All right, welcome to Buying America. Today's episode is foreign nationals and how a foreign national can obtain a visa in the United States. I came as a foreign national. Many of the partners within Buying America came as foreign nationals, and we have Tomas here, who is our strategic partner, immigration attorney, and expert in obtaining visas, right?
True.
You must see all kinds of stuff.
All kinds of stuff.
All right, so let's start off with when I obtained a visa, probably going back about like 25 years ago. I remember it being a pretty stringent process and a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
How have things changed from when I started, what feels like many moons ago, to today?
Logistically, it's easier. The consulates are getting easier in a way that they have instructions on how to do things now instead of just apply and see what happens, right? No, they have a structure now that tell you what to do. So it's easier for you to apply and know what's required from you to get these types of visas. And I like to talk about the investor visa, which is a lesser known visa. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the one that you enter with?
Yep. That's initially how I came. And again, it felt like a pretty arduous process, right? I felt like, what didn't I have to show to try and get that visa?
Yeah, it can be overwhelming. Right now, believe it or not, for Canadian citizens, they only let us submit 50 pages. And that's your whole application. So think back of when you first applied to your visa, how many pages you had to submit. Now they condensed it to just give me these 50 pages and I'll make a decision based on that.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
For Mexico, it's like 100, but for Canada, it's 50.
So that poses a really good question, which is, as Buying America, our objective is to help foreign nationals around the globe invest in opportunities in the United States.
Yeah.
So how different would the process be if, let's say, it's someone from Japan or Australia or, as you said, Canada, Mexico? Is it a different process for each person coming from the various country?
Yes and no. So it's the same visa. It's the E2 visa, same requirements, different steps to get it. So every consulate has its officers that determine whether you get the visa or not. One thing about immigration law is that it's very subjective to the officer that's interviewing you, that's reviewing your case, right? So what might qualify in
Which
Canada,
sounds like a disadvantage, right? I mean, why in this process, in this legal process, which like in the legal world, and I've had to deal with a lot of like legal stuff in business, so I've learned things are typically black and white, or should be, right? Why would there be any element of subjectivity to it?
The answer is, I don't know. But what I can guess is every country is different, and the US law has to adapt to, let's say, so one of the requirements is source of funds. Source of funds is different to prove in Japan than in Mexico and than in Canada. So they have to apply or to adapt to those different things in every country to make sure that they comply with the law in the US. So I understand why there's some subjectivity to it. I think it's too much for that to give them so much free space to determine whether or not it qualifies. I think it should be more strict or more black and white, like you said. But I do get it why some consulates are different than others. It's different kind of documents, different kind of culture. So you gotta understand the culture, understand the documents to be able to apply those documents to the US law. Right?
So would you say that there is a preference, like some countries over others, that the US wants?
I'll say that, I don't know if preference is the word, but I'll tell you, they're less strict in some consulates than others. Okay. So for example, in Europe, let's go back a little bit. For the E2 visa, you have to invest what's called a substantial amount. What's substantial amount? It's different everywhere, right? Everyone has their own definition of what substantial is. The one definition that we get from immigration is invest enough so that the business is successful. Okay. By experience, I can tell you that in Europe, they like to see 100K or more investment. Okay. In Mexico, 50K or more. I don't know why. I don't know why they're more strict in Europe. Maybe because there's more money in Europe. Hard to tell, but there are different standards in every different consulate.
So would you say it's easier to come from a less developed country, or is it easier to come from a more developed country? And the reason why I ask is because I felt, as a Canadian who immigrated to the U.S., I had the feeling in the line of questioning that I was given, almost like, well, why do you want to come here? You're already coming from like a developed country. What do you need to come to the United States for?
I'll say, so in my experience, E2s from Canada are easier to get approved than Mexico.
Okay.
So that counters the point you were making. I'll think it's, I don't know. I'll be guessing at this point, but I'll say you're less questioned on developed countries because there's less. So the investor visa, at some point you got to return to your home country. It's not a permanent visa,
sure.
Right? So one of the requirements is that you're going to eventually leave. If you come from a developed country, then there's more of a chance that you're going to come back because your country's fine, right?
Sure.
But if you come from a country where there's war or the political future is uncertain, then you might not have a reason to go back. So they might be more strict with you on that end, on that point.
I could totally get that.
So that's the way I feel they're treating these applicants. How is your country doing? Is your country healthy? Would you like to go back to your country eventually? And the answer is yes, and yeah, here's your visa. All right.
But does the U.S. look at it like, if you're coming and having obtained an investor visa, doesn't the U.S. sort of automatically look at it like, well, if this individual is seeking an investor visa and wants to reside in the U.S., that ultimately they want to live in the U.S.? So isn't that assumption sort of...
So here's the thing. The investor visa allows you to live in the U.S. for that period of time. It's a 4 to 5 year visa most of the times. So the E2 visa lets you live in the U.S. It doesn't let you permanently immigrate to the U.S. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So yes, I want to open a business for 4, 10, 15 years, but eventually I'm going to go back to my country. That's where I want to live. That's what the E2 visa is. What's the investor visa is? Are there ways to figure out to get a green card or permanent residence? Yes, there's ways. But the E2 visa by itself does not give you that opportunity.
But okay, so you're an experienced immigration attorney. Tell me if this statement is correct. Most people seeking that investor visa, wouldn't the ultimate goal be to reside in the U.S.? Or like what percentage do you think actually just want to go fulfill their investment timeline and then go back to their country? Like, I would guess that most people are like, yeah, this is my segue into the U.S.
You would think so.
Stay.
You would think so. I'll say 50% of my clients want to stay, 50% eventually go back.
Okay.
There's different reasons. First, culture. Culture is extreme. Maybe not Canada, U.S. have similar cultures, but other countries, when you enter the U.S., it's a completely different culture. It's a culture shock.
Yeah.
Some people can adapt, some cannot. So they don't like it and they leave. Other people see it as, look, I just want my kids to have a good education while I'm doing this. And after my kids are adults, they're gonna go back to Mexico or to Canada because I'm done.
That
right?
makes sense. Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
Depends on where you're from, depends on what your intention is, but I'll say about 50-50 people stay versus people go back, right? And that's the intention of the visa. The intention of the visa is you're going to invest for a few years. We're going to let you run your business. You're going to be successful, but eventually you're going to have to go back. And that's what the visa is for.
I got it. Okay. Here's the $1 million question.
Okay.
Not to get all political, but I kind of am anyways, right?
Okay.
So everything that's been happening, whether you agree with the political ideology of the current government in place or not, with everything that's been transpiring and sort of unfolding, right, with massive deportations and all that kind of stuff, is it much more difficult, the same, or less difficult to obtain a visa and immigrate to the U.S.?
So the last time we had President Trump in office, it became not more difficult because the requirements didn't change that much, or the requirements didn't change, but it was a little more strict in the requirements. And it took longer to process a visa just because there was more background checks and more detailed reviewing when he was first president, what was it, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. This time around, I feel like he's leading legal immigration, what I call legal immigration, people that actually get visas, not the people that come here illegally, things like that. We know he's anti that. But what's legal immigration, I feel like he's pretty much leaving it alone, even like helping a little. Because I've seen some cases take being faster than we have Biden. So hard to tell. But for now, what we call legal immigration, it's been either the same or a little better. I'll even say that.
I'm pleasantly surprised to hear that. And it's funny because, so I think part of the reason why I asked that question is I think there's a huge divisiveness right now in the US, right? On whether you're a conservative or a Democrat. Me personally, my feeling is that both sides are wanting immigration. It's not like, again, this is my interpretation of it. I feel like the Democrats will look at the conservatives like, you don't like immigration, even though this country was founded on immigration and we have to like fight for these people. But then on the flip side, I hear conservatives that are saying, we're not opposed to immigration. In fact, we welcome immigrants. All we're wanting to do is have it occur legally. So to your point, it's not that the current administration is opposed to immigrants and wants to build this wall around the U.S. They just want to enforce legal immigration, and they still want to pave the path towards that, not make it any more, difficult.
Yeah, at least that's my experience with the type of visas that I do. I understand that he might be doing things differently for asylums and other things in that nature. But for what's corporate immigration, he's been not that much different from the previous administration.
Okay, that's good to know, because a lot of people listening to this are probably thinking, I've got to wait till there's like a new administration.
Yeah, no.
But no, if you're ready to go and you want to invest in the U.S., now's as good a time as any to take advantage of the opportunity, right?
Yes, don't be afraid of President Trump just because you see all the things that he's doing with illegal immigration. What legal immigration is, he's not... He's pro legal immigration. Let's put it that way. If you're ready to invest or you're ready to move to the U.S. and you want to do it the right way, right now is a good time to do it. Yeah.
So the portrayal of anti-immigration through deportation, that really has nothing to do with legally doing it and applying for visas. So I'm glad that you clarified that, because I know a lot of people that are thinking, I have to wait. I have to wait because this administration is like so anti-immigration, and I've always felt I'm like, I don't know if that's really necessarily the the truth,
right?
So someone wants to immigrate to the U.S. At Buying America, our objective is to not only educate foreign nationals, but to have them partner with us and present good, viable business opportunities, whether that's an acquiring business or investing in real estate, being an active investor or a passive investor. What types of visas does that investor have to look for, and how different or difficult is it if they're doing maybe one thing over another?
Okay, so there are two basic visas that everybody needs to know. Everybody that wants to invest in the U.S. needs to know about: the E2 and the E1.
Okay.
The E2 is investor visa. You see those everywhere. Okay. If you Google investor visa, you'll see 100 videos of it. In the E1, it's your import-export visa. Okay, so for the E1, you do not have to invest in the U.S. You only have to show that you're doing business with the U.S. in your country of origin. So if you're from Canada, then you have to show that you're selling or buying products or services between the U.S. and Canada. Okay. So depending on the type of business that you have, you might go towards the E1 or towards the E2. In the E2, like we said a little bit a while ago, it's investing a substantial amount of money in a company or in a business, and not just in a business. There are types of business that qualify for the visa and just types of business that don't. The business has to be what immigration calls an active investment or an active business. That means that it has sales, it has expenses, it has employees. Okay. It cannot be just, I bought this high-rise downtown and I have somebody managing for me and I'm just getting all the revenue. Well, no, you're not.
So, okay, how does that relate to When I started about 29 years ago, if I told someone I was in the business of like flipping property, they would have been like, flipping? What is that? Now, I mean, it's like common like vernacular, right? Everyone knows what flipping is.
Yeah.
If someone wanted to come into the US and flip properties, is that considered a business? Does that allow them to obtain a visa just doing that?
Right. So it's gonna depend on the size of the operation. If you come into the US and you do one flipping and you try to apply for the visa, more than likely Consular's gonna be like, look, you haven't done enough. It's just one-off, a passive investment. You just did this. And it's not an active investment. You're not stimulating the economy, which is another requirement of the visa. You need to stimulate the economy.
So does based on what you just said there, the definition of active just refer to the amount of volume?
The amount of how much you can stimulate the economy, and that by experience, I can tell you, having employees or contractors. So basically, that's what it equals to, whether it's an active business or not. If the business requires employees, then it's an active business. If the business just requires you to invest and then get money back, then it's not an active business. So with flipping, going back to your example, one-off is not necessarily active, but maybe you have three and you're going for the fourth one. Then you have a flipping business. Then it's a real business that you have ongoing contractors. You're paying a lot of contractor labor, and you might even have a website where your properties are. You might even have social media and a virtual office where you can take calls. And now it's a full-fledged business with an actual operation. Okay. That's what we're looking for, and more when we're dealing with real estate, because real estate by definition is passive, right? So we need to add that active component to the real estate.
So that's the key. You could take this game of real estate, and so long as you could figure out a way to make it an active business and not so much passive, then you're sort of within the definition of...
Correct. And the three basic real estate businesses are flipping, construction, and property management. That's the three that I see the most with this visa.
So what about an investor that just solely and strictly wants to own property, like rental properties, build up a portfolio, doesn't want to set up a management company, doesn't want to get into contracting, like building and that kind of stuff, just wants to simply acquire every year and hold on to that rental property for long-term wealth building? That
more than likely will be considered passive.
Okay.
And you wouldn't get a visa. What you have to do is, if you want a portfolio, you would need to manage it within your company. You have your contractors being paid with your company, not a third-party property management company. You need to be your own property management company that manages your 10, 15 houses portfolio. And that way you're paying contractors, you're paying landscapers, you're paying like all these people are helping you manage your portfolio. And that's an active investment, right? Because there's operations in it.
There's a way we can do it. There's a way we can have a foreign national who wanted to strictly solely build a real estate business, get an investor visa.
Correct.
Okay, cool. So then how does that differ? I think I know the answer, but again, you're the expert. So how does that differ then, whether you're building a business or purchasing an existing operating business?
So with purchasing an existing business, are we talking real estate still?
No. Just
anything. Okay. So if you're purchasing an existing business, it could be a positive or a negative, depending on the financials, right? But if you have let's say a restaurant that has 5 employees already and it's been in operation for 10 years, then the immigration is going to look at that business and say, okay, it's a real operating business. It's not marginal. It has 5 employees. You're stimulating the economy. Everything that I need to see, it's there. So here's your visa. Might be a little easier.
Okay.
Versus you start from zero. You create your own LLC or Inc. And you get the place of business. You buy the equipment. You buy you do the menus. You do the marketing. You do everything. And then you go to the consulate. Instead of having the previous financial, you have to present a business plan and let them know, okay, so here's a restaurant. This size restaurant has 20 tables. With 20 tables, you need 3 waiters or 4 waiters. And then you need a shift manager. And then you need the cooks. And then you need the chef. And then you need all this. So it's going to be 10 employees by the end of the 3rd year. Okay. And that's how they determine whether they're going to give you the visa or not. I say easier when it's an assistant business just because it's already there.
And it's proven. And you could show something.
But I'll say 1% less chance with a new business. It's still e-visas. The percentage right now, I think, is like above 90% approval rate. So it's not a hard visa to get if you know what you're doing.
Okay.
So new business versus existing business. Whenever a client asks me that, is whatever you want. I can do both. Right? What's better? Existing, but you know.
Okay. So, based on an investor acquiring an existing business, are there certain businesses that you're seeing are a lot easier to get into? So let's say, I have a client from Canada, and they want to invest in the U.S. They want to reside, and they're not really certain on the type of business. Is there any one specific sort of business that might be easier than another? Your
old-fashioned businesses that are easy to explain. Your restaurants, your mechanics, your businesses that have a physical place of business and has employees working inside. Those are the easiest to argue. If you come to me and you say, Tomas, I bought IP intellectual property for $50,000 and we're going to do this and it's all in this platform and I have like 3 engineers working across the US remote. Well, like it's complicated, right? Because it's not one business. You have your engineers scattered. IP, so I need to explain what kind of IP and how you're going to do business. And the more complicated the business, the harder it is for me to explain to the officer, right? Okay. Officers are not lawyers. Officers are not business savants. So you need to like really explain what the business is so I can make a determination whether you get the visa.
So the simpler the better.
The simpler the better, yeah.
And then what would the minimum investment be?
It's going to depend on the size of the business. And it's going to depend on the nationality. So let's say Mexico, I'll say, okay, 60, 70K and you should be fine. For Canada, I'll say 80, 90K, you should be fine.
Which seems pretty reasonable.
It's a visa that people think is for millionaires and it's not. It's for the middle class to start to do startups, to be entrepreneurs, to like chase the American dream. Honestly, that's what the E2 visa is for.
And I'm glad that you're clarifying that because I think there's a huge misconception out there that people have to sort of find their way, navigate into the U.S. somehow because it's unrealistic for them to like legally immigrate. And, I know that some people listening might be like, Joe, hey, 60, 70,000 is like still a lot. And I understand that. But at the same time, relatively speaking, it's not that far out of reach.
It's not unreachable. Like with some dedication, you can save that money eventually.
For someone with a good, plan, as you said, not some like convoluted business that is almost indescribable.
Right.
$80,000, $90,000, get into what we call the businesses that are not sexy, right?
Exactly.
But, like your plumbing companies, HVACs, roofings, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But still, for $90,000, you can come to the U.S.
legally.
Yes.
With all the benefits of being legal in the U.S., your social security number, your driver license, you don't have to hide from the police. Like you can live peacefully in the U.S. with that kind of investment.
I feel like there's such a misunderstanding and such a lack of education, just like with anything else. Like in my world, I'm teaching people financial literacy because you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily taught in school, and our financial illiteracy rate is just out the roof.
Yeah.
So I think similar to your field, is there's just a lack of education because most people that I talk to are like, man, I would love to invest in the U.S. and get a visa, but it's just so out of the like realm of possibility.
Right.
And you just clarified it's not really.
It's not.
It takes a little bit of homework.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit of mapping out. Takes working with someone like you,
the attorney,
who obviously knows how to like navigate and be able to put something together to make it happen. And then that's it.
If you consult with the right people, it's an easy thing to do, right? If you try to do it yourself, or if you heard from a friend of a friend and you hear all the terror stories out there, then it's going to be a horrifying experience. But if you know what you're doing, it's not an unattainable visa. It's a very accessible visa if you find the right people to help out with.
All right. That's awesome, man.
All right, Joe.
Buying America. We're here to educate you, get you into the U.S., business opportunities, real estate opportunities. strategically aligning ourselves with experts and partners like Tomas. Awesome episode, man. Thank you for the
Thank you,
insight. This is well needed.
Happy to be here, Joe. Thank you.